Want to share a story with many of you out there that is awful. Um, we're the large audience in Memphis, and this story has spread well beyond Memphis because, unfortunately, I believe it's emblematic of the crime wave that we are living amidst in so many different parts of the country right now. So, a young mom of two named Eliza Fletcher went for a jog. She was training for marathons. She did early morning jogs because she wanted to be able to. I don't know her full routine, but I do have a wife who is trained for marathons. And in the South, in the summer in particular, it is super hot. And if you have a job and you have young children, sometimes you have to get up really early in the morning to be able to get in long runs outdoors. So this mom of two, school teacher in the Memphis area, young kids, she's out for a jog. It's 4:30 in the morning. She is by the University of Memphis's campus, and she is attacked and assaulted by a man who kidnaps and kills her. The man who kidnapped and killed her was out of jail early. He did not fulfill the full terms of his sentence in the state of Tennessee that would have required him to still be in jail, where he had previously kidnapped a man, a lawyer in Memphis, put him in the trunk, and drove that man around, requiring him to withdraw money from a variety of ATM machines until that man was able to escape. He was released from prison in November of 2020, and he's been charged with first-degree murder. This man has, for killing this young mother of two. Buck, I think one reason why this story, again, her name is Eliza Fletcher. I would encourage you guys, Google her. She appears to have been a fantastic mother, wife, school teacher, a ray of sunshine in the world in which she lived. And I think one reason, Buck, this is connecting with so many people viscerally, and I know many of you out there have been following this story. They've been looking for her body. They've been trying to figure out what happened to her, is because it is a perfect approximation of a random act of violence that should have never been able to be perpetrated against anyone. A young mom is out for a jog, training for a marathon, two young kids, school teacher, husband back home. Early in the morning, she's trying to fit in all the things in her life, and she is attacked and brutally murdered in a totally senseless and random act of violence by someone who should have never been on the streets.
There were policy decisions that not only this heinous incident, this heinous crime, but in so many others like it across the country, made this tragedy possible. Democrats have been pushing for early release, pushing for ending mass incarceration. These are decisions that they made based in ideology, based in the sense that the criminal justice system is racist, that the best way to address what they claim is the racism of the system is to lower prosecution rates, lower incarceration terms, let people out earlier, and effectively side with criminals as much as possible in the criminal justice system. That is a shift that has been occurring now for years. In the last couple of years, we have seen the numbers reflect what that actually means. I saw an ad over the weekend. I'm trying to remember what group put it out, but it went viral. It got a lot of attention, Clay. And it was just showing all of the crime that's been occurring in cities across the country in broad daylight. I mean, really brazen, awful, violent crime going on in cities across the country. And where do you see Democrats focusing more attention? Donald Trump's document habits or stopping crime in major cities that are at all-time highs? Look at what's going on in Seattle. I think Seattle just is on track for its most violent year ever. Portland is on track for its most violent year ever. Philadelphia is on track for its most violent year ever. This means hundreds and hundreds of people killed beyond what had been the case in an average year in these cities, because Democrats feel better about themselves. They feel anti-racist by pushing these policies. They think they're being heroes and they're pushing for civil rights or whatever by limiting the terms that people serve for violent crimes, by undermining the will of state legislatures in many places. And how many of these tragedies do we have to go through before people realize if they don't change the system, we will have more of this, more of these horrible incidents, more of these, it's the person who is assaulted or in this case killed after being kidnapped. It's also the family that's shattered. I mean,
Yes.
think for all the shootings that occur in a place, let's say Philadelphia, where they're going to have their worst year ever for murders. It's going to be hundreds of murders. It's thousands and thousands of people whose lives are shattered. It's businesses on the street where a shooting occurs, let's say, where a drive-by occurs, that knows that they have to leave the neighborhood. They have to close it down. It's the urban decay that results. And what do Democrats do when we say, we need to back police, we need to crack down? You know what they do? They sneer and say that's racist. I think it's racist to leave minority communities to suffer from the idiotic Democrat policies and not to recognize, I mean, as I said, Clay, in New York City, they can break it down. 5,000 people in New York, give or take, are the repeat violent offenders. There are 2 million black residents of New York City.
Yep.
Just so do we want to just keep the 99.9% safe, or do we want to focus in on disparate impact and what makes social justice warriors feel good about themselves?
Keep beating the drum, folks. Keep beating the drum. I know some people might be getting tired of it. See links in the video description. Speaking of Tennessee, I ran the number. Now, when Tennessee puts out their state reports, they don't collate it by county. You have to find all the jurisdictions in each county. Now, I wasn't going to do that. But I did do it for Shelby and Davidson. There's 4 or 5 counties in Tennessee that consistently vote Democrat, but Shelby and Davidson are 2 highly populated ones, and they're in the 60% area, so they're uber Democrat. Did you know from 2018 to 2020, Shelby and Davidson counties, that's Memphis. Memphis isn't all of their county, but Nashville, off the top of my head, I can't remember which one's which now, but Memphis is its own, Nashville is its own city county conglomerate. So I looked up all those, and according to the state reports from Tennessee, when I did my homicide reports from 2015 to 2017 and 2018 to 2020, I had Memphis in there. I didn't have Nashville. I should have. But anyways, for what it's worth, in the state reports, Shelby and Davidson counties had a combined homicide rate from 2018 to 2020 of 19.882. You know what? Using the state reports, you know what Tennessee's homicide rate was outside of those 2 counties? Because Tennessee, you look at a map of Tennessee and it's all blue. You might be saying, why do you call it blue? Well, go look at Ronald Reagan's Sea of Blue in 1984 and go to Dave Leap's election atlas and see his note about red versus blue. Wink, wink. But anyways, you look at Tennessee and it's uber Republican. The vast majority of counties vote Republican there. Outside of Davidson and Shelby counties, from 2018 to 2020, there was a homicide rate of 4.318. which is well below the national average and well below the Tennessee average. So in other words, the counties in Tennessee that are causing Tennessee to be a high homicide state are 2 Democrat areas. And then you thumb through the state reports and you'll see that blacks hover around 50% of all the arrests for Group A offenses. And it's slightly more than whites, but whites are about 4 times the population of Tennessee, if you thumb through those reports. Here, we'll do another one real quick. Then I'll close this out with a little rant at the end again about the real Democrat insurrection. The real insurrection's a Democrat one. How about Missouri, another high homicide state that leans Republican? According to the FBI from 2018 to 2020, Missouri had a homicide rate of 10.304 per 100,000. That is sky high. And the state reports peg it at 10.38. They were real close in their number of homicides. It was off by less than 20. So you can compare these. These are pretty good. Now, St. Louis City and Kansas City, and that's St. Louis City because there's a St. Louis County. St. Louis City and Kansas City from 2018 to 2020 had a homicide rate of 45.995. You know what the homicide rate was in Missouri outside of those 2 jurisdictions? According to the Missouri State Highway Patrol, it was a little over 5.5 per 100,000. The FBI, it was 4.923. So that's still high. Then I went and looked at the counties in Missouri that voted 60% or more for Trump twice, and their homicide rate was 1.814. So it's counties in the middle. But the high homicide areas in Missouri have a lot of black-on-black homicide, and they vote Democrat. So don't let people fool you with that. I'm just doing this again because you've got to beat it. You've got to beat the drum. Now, again, to the real Democrat insurrection. Here's what it is. Clay and Buck talked about this. I mentioned this in a previous video. Again, see the links in the description. You'll see that there's a lot of murders in Baltimore, for example, that were committed by people. Had they served their full sentence, they wouldn't have gotten out to commit another homicide. So the real insurrection is a Democrat one, and here it is. We're going to let violent criminals out early so they can kill more people. We're going to take away your guns so you can't defend yourself from these lunatics. And if you're a Kyle Rittenhouse and you get tired of people trying to burn your community to the ground and you do something about it, we're going to try to put you in jail for murder. And if we can, we're either going to intimidate the police into the Ferguson effect, where they don't do proactive policing in high crime areas, which does leave some good, poor, and middle-class black people, hangs them out to dry, and some poor, middle-class white people. Hangs them out to dry because we're going to let the violent criminals loose. We're not going to let you defend yourself because you won't have a gun to do it. And if you do, we're going to put you in jail for murder. And then the police won't be there. And if the police don't do any proactive policing, they're not going to be in the area to catch somebody when a violent crime is committed. So there's less chance of them getting caught. And when they do get caught, they're going to let go. So they're going to let them go early. That, my friends, is the real insurrection, and it is a Democrat insurrection. Have a nice day. Don't thank me now, and vote the Democrats out in November.